Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Students, welcome to our virtual session of week 2 of Database Management Systems course. If you can hear me properly, please raise your hand. Okay, good. Okay, so we were having an introduction about databases in our face-to-face class, and we were covering this week's slides of chapter 17 of the textbook. We covered the slides up till slide number 19. A few more slides are left, which I'll be covering today and in the session, and then after that you could ask questions about it. But before proceeding from slide number 20, I want to know if you have any questions from the contents we covered in class. Please ask me now. Okay, Amal, please, do you have any question? Please type in your question. Okay. Okay, so let me share slides with you. In chapter 17, we are talking about disk structure, basic file structure, and hashing. We talked about the structure, disk storage, and file structure in face-to-face class, and today we are going to talk about hashing. I'm moving to slide number 20 directly. Hashing is one way to manage your data on your, either in your memory or on your disk. So it is a way or method to organize your data such that it can be accessed quickly when you need it. So hashing is done in algorithms. When you perform hashing, you place your data by using hashing in your primary memory. And it is done on the hard disk as well, when you place your data on the disk by using hashed files. Hashing for disk file is called external hashing. The file blocks are divided into n equal sized buckets. So you have file blocks with you, you divide them into n equal sized buckets and number them from 0 to m minus 1. So you have same like arrays, like if you have array of size 10, the indexes of array are from 0 to 9. So in case of external hashing as well, the buckets are called, the buckets are same as arrays, and you number them from 0 to m minus 1. Typically, a bucket corresponds to one or a fixed number of disk blocks. So each bucket points towards the disk blocks, either it can be one or it can be many. One of the file fields is designated to be the hash key. So you have different attributes associated with the files, and you keep them in the form of fields. So one of the fields, you designate it as the hash key of the file. The record with the hash key value k is stored in bucket I, where I is obtained by applying hash function on that value k. So if the hash key value is k, so if you apply the hash function, and you store it in bucket I, and h is the hashing function. Search is very efficient on the hash key, but the problem arises when collision occurs, where a new record hashes to a bucket that is already full. So this is how collisions may occur in when you are hashing. An overflow file is kept for storing such records. So you can resolve collisions if you are keeping an overflow file which is keeping the duplicate copy. Overflow records that hash to each bucket can be linked together. There are numerous methods for collision resolution, including the following. So to resolve collisions, you can use one of these methods. The one is open addressing, the second is chaining, and the third method is multiple hashing. Open addressing means proceeding from the occupied position specified by the hash address. The program checks the subsequent position in order until an unused position is found. In open addressing, so your value is to be stored in a particular slot, but if that slot is filled, you can use the next slot to place your value. So this is open addressing. Then the second method is chaining. For this method, various overflow locations are kept, usually by extending the array with the number of overflow positions. So you can keep overflow positions as well. A pointer field is added to each record location. So a clear is resolved by placing the ring record in an unused overflow location and setting the pointer of the occupied hash address location to the address that overflows. So what you are doing now in chaining is that if you have a sequence of like locations available with you where you can place your data, and besides this you have some overflow locations as well where you can keep the overflow data. If a value is hashing to a location where some data is already there, you cannot erase and place your data over there, so you need to utilize overflow location. So that what you do is that you place a pointer which points to the overflow location where have used the data, where you have kept the data. Then another is multiple hashing. The program applies a second hash function. So if after applying the first hash function there is Boolean, then you can use another hash function which may result in some other location. Or you can apply third hash function. So you in perform hashing multiple times unless you get a location that is free. Here you can see matching bucket numbers to disk block address. So these are bucket numbers and these are block addresses on disk. So you in this location you are placing pointers which are pointing towards to the blocks on the disk. See here, this is pointing towards some other block, this is pointing towards some other block, and here you are pointing to another block. To reduce overflow records, a hash file is typically kept 70 to 80% full, and you do not keep it 100% full. The hash function h should distribute the records uniformly among the buckets. So when you are choosing a hash function, you have multiple hash functions available with you. Like if you explore web, you Google it out for hash functions. So there are you may say like thousands of hash functions available now. So if you use a suitable hash function which will uniformly utilize all the buckets, so it will be a good hash function. Another attribute of a good hash function is that it should not depend on only part of the input. It should depend on the complete input. Like if your input is a number of 4 digits, the hash function should not depend on only first 2 digits. It should depend on all the values. For example, if you are storing numbers of 4 digits, the hash function can be sum of all of each digit divided by something. So this is one hash function. You can have any other hash function as well. The main disadvantage of static external hashing is that fixed number of buckets, because you have all fixed number of buckets available with you, which cannot grow and shrink, and ordered access on the hash key is quite inefficient because you are just placing the records as they are coming. You are not sorting them and then placing them. So ordered access, if you want to access them in order, it will be difficult because every block is stored at a different location. All your data is dispersed. This is how overflow is handled. This is the diagram depicting that. Like you have bucket 0, bucket 1, bucket 2, and up to 6, like this is bucket 9. So if your bucket is full, like in this case, this bucket had 3 locations and all 3 are filled. If some other value is hashing to bucket 1, so you cannot keep it here. So what you do is that you place a pointer which points towards the overflow bucket. So this complete picture, like these 2 tables are actually overflow buckets. These 3 places and these ones and because this dot 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 is indicating that all these are overflow buckets, and these are total 10 buckets from 0 up till 9. So if some of the buckets like bucket 1 and 2 are filled, because they had 3 slots and all 3 slots are filled, so you keep a pointer which points towards the location, towards a location in overflow bucket, which has another pointer which may point towards some other location. So your data may be placed at multiple locations in overflow bucket, not on consecutive locations. So in this way you handle overflow. You can use dynamic and extendable hash files. The hashing techniques are adapted to allow the dynamic growth and shrinking of the number of file records. Because one of the disadvantages of this bucket storage was that you have fixed number of buckets in advance, and then you have fixed number of overflow buckets. So, or even if you don't have fixed number of overflow buckets, having the initial bucket size is fixed is maybe a problem. So, you use some techniques which allow dynamic growth and shrinking of the number of file records. These techniques include the following: dynamic hashing, extendable hashing, or linear hashing. Both dynamic and extendable hashing use the binary representation of the hash value. Like whatever value it is, like either it is a character or a floating point number, or it is an integer, it is converted into a binary number. So it uses dynamic and extendable hashing uses the binary representation of the hash value in order to access the directory. In dynamic hashing, directory is a binary tree. In extendable hashing, directory is an array of size 2 raised power d, where d is the global depth. So in both of them, you need to have a binary representation, and then you make a binary tree in dynamic hashing. The directories can be stored on disk, and they expand or shrink dynamically. Directory entries point to a disk block that contain the stored records. An insertion into disk block that is full causes the block to split into 2 blocks, and the records are redistributed among the 2 blocks. Dynamic and extendable hashing do not require an overflow area because it can expand and shrink dynamically. And then we have extendable hashing as well. You can parallelize disk access using the RAD technology. So RAD basically stands for Redundant Array of Inexpensive Disk. So this is a technology which came up to allow you to access more data in a parallel fashion. Secondary storage technology must take steps to keep up in performance and reliability with the processor technology. As you know, that processor capability has increased a lot. Now, if we say that we are using Core i5 or Core i7 processors, Core i7 machines, it means we have 7 processors in our system who are working in parallel. So if 7 processors are there who are working in parallel, so it means we need to speed up our secondary storage devices as well, so that they can transfer data more efficiently or more speedily. A major advance in secondary storage technology is represented by the development of RAD. The main goal of RAD is to even out the widely different rates of performance improvement of disks against those in memory and microprocessor. As you know, that microprocessor or processor is the fastest device in your system, and then if you talk about main memory, it is slower than processor, but processor is using data from memory. Like memory has different, like you have cache memory, then you have random access memory, and then you have secondary storage, and secondary storage is considered as the slowest one. A natural solution to allow speed difference among your disk storage devices, your processor, and your primary memory is to use a large array of small independent disks acting as a single high performance logical disk. So you are using a large array of small independent disks. A concept called data stripping is used. which utilizes parallelism to improve disk performance. Now you can see here that the stripping distributes data transparently over multiple disks to make them appear as a single large fast disk. Like here you can see that in figure A, we are doing bit level stripping across 4 disks. You have this data. So stripping of data across multiple. So you can see here that you are stripping this data in disk 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Disk 0, 1, 2, 3. So you are using 4 disks to keep your data. And then when you are using file and you are not using binary data, you can perform block level stripping across 4 disks. Like block file has multiple blocks. So for same file, you can keep blocks of file on multiple disks, and you can access them in parallel. Different RAID organizations were defined based on different combination of the 2 factors of granularity of data interleaving. Data interleaving means data stripping at pattern used to compute redundant information. So you are going to access them parallel. RAID level 0 has no redundant data and then has the best write performance at the risk of data loss. There are multiple levels in this in which it got improved. The level 0 was the initial level. In RAID level 1, we use mirrored disk, like the disk keeps a copy of it. RAID level 2 use memory style redundancy by using Hamming codes which contain parity bits for distinct overlapping subsystem components. Like we are having some error detection and correction mechanism if we are using RAID level 2. RAID level 3 uses a single parity disk. Like I hope you are familiar with the parity bit. If you have studied data communication, parity bit is used to check that the data being transmitted is correct. So level 3 uses a single parity disk relying on the disk controller to figure out which disk has failed. Like you are detecting failure in RAID level 3. In RAID level 4 and 5, we use block level data stripping. Like we improved it more with level 5 distributing data and parity information across all disks. And level 6 applies the so-called P plus Q redundancy scheme. So you need to study this P plus Q redundancy scheme, and you need to study in more detail about Reed-Solomon codes. The Reed-Solomon codes are the codes which were used in information coding and theory quite a long time before, but now we have utilized these codes for our in security applications while designing some encryption algorithms, and we are using here on our disk these codes to protect against up to 2 disk failure by using these 2 redundant disks. Different RAID organizations are being used under different situations. RAID level 1 is the easiest for rebuild of a disk from other disks. It is for use for critical applications like logs, maintaining event logs or error logs. RAID level 2 uses memory style redundancy by using Hamming codes which contain parity bits. It includes both error detection and correction. This is quite a repetition of the content we have just studied. Most popular uses of RAID technology currently are level 0 with stripping, and level 1 with mirroring, and level 5 with an extra drive for parity. So when we have to decide like which RAID levels we have to incorporate in our disk. It depends on the level of RAID which you are choosing, and the number of disks we have, the choice of parity schemes, and the grouping of disks for block level stripping. If we are going for block level stripping, and we go for it because our file is divided in a sequence of blocks, so we perform block level stripping. So these are the design decisions when we have to make when we go for RAID technology. So this is some popular level of RAID. Figure A shows RAID level 1, mirroring of data on 2 disks. Like you are using disk 0, but you are mirroring it on disk 1 as well, so that in case disk 0 gets failed or gets corrupted, you can use the correct copy from disk 1. B is RAID level 5, stripping of data with distributed parity across 4 disks. So you are keeping the data on multiple disks and are keeping the parity information on any of these disks. Like for example, for A, parity information is 4, for B it's in 3, for C it's in 2, and for D it's in 1. The demand for higher storage has risen considerably in recent times, and because we have lot of data available with us, and with the advent of cloud computing, we need a lot of storage over the web to place our data, and to manage that storage, it is very important to manage that storage effectively. Organizations have a need to move from a static, fixed data center-oriented operation to more flexible and dynamic infrastructure for information processing. Thus, they are moving to a concept of storage area networks, which are called SANs. In a SAN, online storage peripherals are configured as nodes on a high-speed network and can be attached and detached from server in a very flexible manner. So you have storage area networks with you, and you can access your data from that network whenever you need. This allows storage systems to be placed at longer distance from the server and provide different performance and connectivity options. So instead of keeping multiple copies of data at different locations, you are placing your data over the storage area network, and you can access it when you require, and the data may be placed at a very longer distance from the server or your system or your devices, and you can access the data when you need. But we need to be very careful about the performance and security issues, so that you get your data correctly without any errors, and with your privacy and security not get affected, and you get a good performance as well. Like, the performance should not be very degraded or deteriorated, so that you failed to utilize the data effectively. So you have to, when you are going for storage area networks, you have to address all these issues. Why we go for storage area networks? Because of some advantages. Because it's flexible many-to-many connectivity among servers. Up to 10 kilometer separation can be there between server and storage system, using appropriate fiber optic cables, and better isolation capabilities allowing non-destructive addition of new peripherals and devices. SANs face the problem of combining storage options from multiple vendors and dealing with evolving standards of storage management software and hardware. So storage area networks are there, but the standards are still not well defined. You can say well defined because the standards are still evolving, that which storage management software and hardware you should use, and there are multiple vendors as well of whom you have to maintain your data. So these are still evolving area. So this is a summary of chapter. Now I want to know if you have any questions from these contents you just studied, or from the previous contents. Yes, Amal, you have any questions? Please type in your questions. Okay, that's fine. Okay, the contents for this week ends there. Have you read the contents given over the Blackboard? Have you seen that? Like, if you go to the course material and activities, you will see that you have, first of all, you have chapter 17 to go through. The complete chapter 17 you have to read. Then in this week you have to listen to the videos. And 2 videos are given over there. One is available on LMS and the other is available on YouTube about secondary computer storage devices. You have to watch both of these videos. You have to read complete chapter 17, and you have to go through all the slides as well. There is no assignment right now in this week. However, you can perform the assignment. But since I have received no information about assignment from coordinator till now, so the assignment for this week, but you can perform the assignments in advance. It will give you in next week, so your assignment will be ready and you can submit it right away. Okay, I'm turning my microphone off. So but I'm available over here till 8 p.m. If you have any question, just type in the text and I'll answer it for you. Okay, so thank you very much.